Of the April 6th City Council meeting, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have the roll, please.
Belzak. Here. Plistic.
I think we lost him.
Gustafson.
Here.
Kenny. Here. Shower.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Vaughn.
Here.
And I guess Clistic is not here. So I have 6 present.
And he'll be in a minute.
We have a quorum. At this point, I'd like to, we need a motion, Brian, for the public hearing. Yes, we're going to open our public hearing on our budget. Clerk Regona will read our advertisement.
This is a legal notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that the City of Darien has developed a preliminary budget for the fiscal year beginning May 1, 2020 and ending April 30th, 2021, which is currently under review by the Mayor and the City Council. Illinois Compiled Statutes 65 ILCS 5/8-2-9.9 provides that prior to final approval of the budget, the City holds a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment on the proposed budget. The public hearing on the budget will be held before the corporate authorities of the City of Darien on Monday, April 6, 2020, commencing at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the Darien City Hall, 1702 Plainfield Road, Darien, Illinois, 60561. The tentative budget is on file at City Hall and is available for public inspection. This was published in the DuPage County Chronicle on March 25th of 2020.
Do we have any public comment on the budget? If none, I'd like to close the public hearing. And we move to our questions, comments, and announcements of a general nature. We have 2 areas of in our minutes, on our agenda, where people in the audience can come forward and talk about any topic. This one does not have to be agenda related. If you're here tonight for a particular item, you may want to wait till that item comes up on the agenda. But you can speak now if you wanted to leave and get home. So does anyone in the audience have anything that they would like to say at the microphone at this time? Please come forward and state your name.
Also, I see that Tom Plistic is on. I marked him down 731.
Good.
Hi, William Berry. I'm on Nantucket Drive in Darien over here. I was just coming to voice my opinion on the Nantucket Basin conversion. And I think that most of the residents around the basin are against it, doing anything to it other than what you're doing right now. I don't know if you guys have seen that, we went through and we got signatures from 14 people of the 24 that live around the basin to be a no, that we don't want anything touched from it. We do not want a natural area back there. And I don't know if doesn't look like it's on the agenda for tonight, but I don't know when we speak about that.
It's currently in the draft budget that will go to the city council, and I'll speak to that in a few moments, but that will go to the city council 2 weeks from tonight, the budget.
Mm-hmm.
If it's approved in the budget, the city council still would need to take action to approve the engineering work on the basin. So we have at least 2 to 4 weeks out before there's anything on the agenda. And I know there's an email with a number of names on there. We'll certainly let people know when.
Right.
But it is in the draft budget. But again, we need a second action on that.
Okay, so no money has been spent right now on the project?
But no, it's been discussed in the tentative budget meetings we've had, or the city council's had through the month of February and March.
Okay.
But again, the first step is an engineering agreement with our consulting engineer. That would need to be approved as really our first step to move forward.
Okay.
That has not been authorized yet.
Yeah. Just so you guys know, I went to every house around there of the 24 that are completely surrounding the basin. I got 14 no's, one indifferent, didn't care one way or the other, and the other person just didn't want to fill out the form. They were going to come to the meeting. So we've got at least 15, and I plan to get to the rest of them to get more. I think we would get more no's, because there's a few that I know for sure that use the basin for particular. A guy hits his golf balls and wedges down there, certain things like that. And I know there are going to be some more no's. So I want to make sure I can get those present before you guys have any votes, or at least, present it before you make any decisions.
It's my hope that by the time this comes forward for a vote by the council, we can allow more people in the room to be able to go to the microphone and address this.
Right.
You understand why we're running things the way we run things now, because of the shelter in
Oh,
place.
absolutely. Yeah.
But if the shelter in place goes to the end of April and we've seen this peak, and in May we're able to have a discussion like this, and there's no shelter in place, hopefully then people will be allowed to be here for
Yeah.
that meeting.
I know a lot of the other neighbors were going to come, so I just volunteered myself just to
I'm glad you made
come out
it
and
tonight.
see.
Just stay safe.
Will do. You too.
Can I ask one quick question? I did a site visit there about a week and a half ago. I'm just trying to get a little bit idea from you. What's the concern of developing it with putting the natural plants and stuff in?
Well, everything that they gave us as an example to go look at, which was like 67th and Richmond, 67th and High Road, or the new development that was over on Manning, where the new houses went up kind of behind Walmart, and they've got the area built there. They're just like overgrown. They look like abandoned lots to me. I don't think that they're well taken care of nature areas. I mean, the idea of having butterflies and, more birds and that isn't what those areas look like. They look like they're abandoned lands with overgrown brush on them.
Because we've got a retention pond in my ward that, I was considering, approaching the residents on about having that type of plants and stuff put in there. So I was just interested
Yeah.
in what your concern against it, because there's not much to look at right now.
Right, but right, I agree. This isn't and if we could put it off and see what it looks like in midsummer or even fall, that'd be another matter, but you're giving us a time frame to go and here's what it's going to be, and for what we see now, I mean, it doesn't look nice at all. And you can't use it for anything. I mean, there's no way to walk. You talk about putting walking trails and do different things in there. I don't know how you could ever do it in the lands that you have there, because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, that thing fills up probably 3 or 4 times a summer.
Okay.
I mean, we get 3 or 4 feet of water in there before it drains off. And I just can't imagine how you can get anything that's going to live under 3 or 4 foot of water, even if it's an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time. So,
Okay.
if we saw something different than what we were directed to go look at, it might be a different matter. But what they asked us to go see,
Okay.
based on what they were going to do behind our houses, we didn't like it at all.
Okay.
I mean, to everybody, and there's a lot of upset people that don't want it to change. And we understand there's a problem with cutting the grass. And,
Right.
I think
Yeah, 'cause
that's
I saw
the
a lot
biggest
of
thing.
ruts and stuff in there from last year when the grass was cut.
Yeah, every year they do it. But
Right.
if they're a little bit smarter about it and don't cut it after it fills up or rains real heavy, then it gives it a chance to dry out. We don't care if it's not cut every week. That isn't our complaint at all. I don't think anybody on the basin would say that. It's just,
At this point,
Okay.
like a lot of things we discussed in the budget, they're very preliminary in nature, and they have to come back to the city
Yeah.
council. And I think what the staff try to do is get a lot of information out to the residents adjacent to and the residents throughout the community. But we still have a lot of prep work to do and have to engage the city council a bit more, because again, at the budget, there wasn't a lot of discussion like there will be when we actually move forward for the council to discuss. So we'll keep everybody
right.
involved also.
Okay. That's one of the things we didn't really understand is our own alderman really didn't have any voice in, he didn't know about it, he said, of what we were even going to do, which I find that
And with all due respect,
different.
that will be my concern. And again, I'm not sure who the gentleman up there is, but with all due respect, a clarification was sent out for the alderman, Tom Klistic, was the alderman that fronted the actual project, whereas Ted Shower was some of the the elected official or representing a resident there. So if there's, and again, I did not anticipate that this was going spoken about tonight, I understand, but again, they're scheduled for the following city council, whatever the next meeting date was. And again, we are including all of the concern from the resident, and whether or not you'd like to give any type of summary right now, Mr.
No, save it.
Marquez, I'm
Not
more than
yet.
happy. Not, I'll hold off on.
We'll hold off until we bring it back to the council and have the full packet of information. The council then could look at that in more detail ahead of time.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dan, thank you for, real quick, Dan, thanks for jumping in and making that clarification. Literally last week or week and a half ago was when I found out about this whole thing. Since that time, I did get a bunch of communication about the Nantucket Basin, and I'll put them all under one, under receiving of communication, and go from there, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Fair
enough.
Thank you.
Thanks for your input.
Some stuff there if you want to.
I didn't touch nothing.
No, it's up to you. It's up
No,
to
I
you.
made a point of not
It's up
touching
to
anything.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to approval of the minutes. I have 3 sets of Administrative Finance Committee of the whole minutes, February 19th, February 25th, and March 3rd. Could I have a motion to approve all 3 of those?
I so move.
Moved by Alderwoman Sullivan, second by Alderman Shower. Any questions or comments? If none, the roll.
Sullivan,
Aye.
Shower,
Aye.
Vaughn,
Aye.
Kenny,
Aye.
Gustafson,
Aye.
Clistic,
Aye.
Belzak. 7 ayes.
Those minutes have been approved. Could I have a motion and a second for the city approval of the city council minutes for March 16th, 2020? Moved by Alderman Belzak, seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Questions or comments? If none, the roll.
Belzak. Vaughn. Vaughn.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
Shower.
Abstain.
Kenny.
Aye.
Gustafson.
Aye.
Clistic.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes and 1 abstention.
The minutes have been approved. Receiving of communications. Do any of the aldermen have any communications they'd like to share with the council? Alderman Shower.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I stated before, last week I sent out a notification to everybody that was on the email about Nantucket Basin, and I asked them to literally email me individually what their thoughts are, and including Mr. Berry has already spoken, June and Randall Arnold, John and Ashley DeVay, Murasamy and Vijay, my apologies, Venkataraman, Mary Ann and Tony Jordan, Dan Nagel, Joe and Trish Miller, John Sitas, Mr. El Mahassani, Stacy and Mike Sleswinski, and Bob and Marcia Reba. They are all in no favor of the Nantucket Basin, and as again we're going to be discussing in the future, but let me just say this, as being Alderman of Ward 1, this is probably the most that I've ever gotten about a situation in my ward in probably 11 years. And I'm going to tell you for the record right off the bat, I'm going to be sort of supporting my people, and I'll leave it at that.
Anyone else have any communications? Alderman Kenny?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I did receive a communication from Casey Cavello. Casey is the developer for the 75th Street property that's in discussion with the car wash. And, you know, that's about all I got.
Anyone else have any communications? Alderman Gustafson?
Yeah, I received 6 emails regarding the potential annexation. I'll just mention those briefly and when I get into the discussion on that point.
And I think Mr. Vanna has sent out to you copies of emails that both he and I have received regarding the annexation. Anyone else? If none, then I'll go to the mayor's report. Oh, Tom, Alderman Klostek, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I received a piece of communication from a Mr. John Yurchek from the 7,000 block of Farmville, just asking for more sidewalks. In that area, the sidewalks abruptly stop, and there's no more sidewalks. So just a concern if we could add sidewalks potentially in that area. There's no houses. I believe it's just condos that are located there. So I got copied Mrs. Sullivan and Alderman Belcheck as well. So
Okay.
that is.
I don't think we're going to be doing any sidewalks at all, period, this year. So that'll have to be something that comes up next year. Anyone else? All right, I'd like to go to the mayor's report. I'd like to give you an update on this Census 2020. This data changes on a day-to-day basis. I put out a short video on Facebook last week to remind people of the importance of the count. I informed the residents that the United States Census Bureau would be mailing a paper census out today, April 6th, for anyone who had not already completed the online. Just to give you an idea, Darien so far has, as of April 1st, has a 53.7% return rate. That's pretty good. And that figure goes up every day. Right now, the state of Illinois probably ranks 8th in total census count among the 50 states. So we're pretty good as a state. In terms of DuPage County, Naperville is up to 63%. So our goal is to get into the 80s. 10 years ago, we had an 86% return rate. So we're looking to have a figure up there again this year, and I'll report to you how well we're doing from time to time. But as of April 1st, we were at 53%. So that's my update on the census. Regarding the coronavirus update, I continue to participate by phone, video conference with various agencies like the DuPage Mayors and Managers, the Illinois Department of Public Health, Mayor Lori Lightfoot's group, Governor Pritzker, the DuPage Department of Public Health, and all this information are either video conferences or phone conferences. There's hundreds of mayors involved in each one of those conferences. Mr. Vanna participates in managers' phone conferences. A lot of the data I get with the mayor conferences, Mr. Vanna gets as a manager. It's critical information, and that information that we think is appropriate is information that we share. You might notice during Direct Connect, we've been putting out a lot of information about the CARES Act, which is legislation that was signed by the president a week ago Friday. There's a lot of information there about small business administration grants and loans. Mr. Corrin and I discussed that today. We've put out information with regard to that. We've had a number of businesses that have called me with regard to their concern. Just to update you, I have allowed Frugal Muse and the candy store next door, which are considered non-essential businesses, to take orders online, to take orders over the phone that can be paid by credit card and deliver curbside. And I'm doing that because those are two boutique stores that are hurting tremendously because their doors are closed. And if I have any other boutique type businesses like that can take orders online or over the phone and pay by credit card, I will acknowledge those as well and give those permission to do curbside pickup. I think it's critical that we do everything we can to support our businesses. We're also still working with our seniors. I got good news today. Steve Wernicke informed me we had 6 senior citizens call for the Lions Club to do their shopping tomorrow. So there'll be 6 families. They'll get some groceries tomorrow from the Darien Lions Club members. Over the last couple of weeks, I get emails from people specifically, why aren't you monitoring the forest preserves? There's a lot of people out there. We can't go out there. They're not practicing social distancing. Why haven't you stopped the deployment of 5G technology in the city of Darien? Why haven't you dropped the fee that we have to pay for garbage stickers? First of all, 2 of those are governmental agencies which I have no control over. 5G is going to come into Darien, whether or not Darien says yes or no to it, because the federal government and the state government have approved 5G. As far as the waste, the garbage pickup and the stickers, we have a contract, and that contract has to be honored. So I just can't willy-nilly say, I'm sorry, but nobody has to pay for their garbage stickers now. That would be chaos. So we can't do that. We can't go down that avenue. You know, and as far as the Forest Preserve, I've had contact with Linda Painter. She's had contact with their board. They shut down the waterfall portion of Waterfall Glen. They're keeping the Forest Preserve open, but they will take a serious look at closing it if people fail to honor the social distancing. And they're still seeing crowds, and their Forest Preserve police are still breaking up those crowds. And they've put out warnings, please don't ruin this for other people. Even Alderman Klistek, I think, sent out something the other day, even asking people, please don't do this because it's ruining a good thing for everybody. So that's really where we are. I would advise you to take a look at the podcast that I did last week with LK Media. I would ask all of you to really urge residents to sign up for Darien Direct Connect. Our Direct Connect is putting out a lot of critical information. We still have a lot of residents who are not getting that information. I think it's critical. Communication is really critical during this shelter in place. So I think that if you see something that the city puts out via social media, if you would share it with your social media comrades, I think that's critical, because that goes even a little further when you do that. But please urge your residents to sign up for Direct Connect. I think that's critical. And lastly, this just came to me today. I have a lot of people calling saying, Joe, I want to make masks, I want to donate, I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, I've given them Help DuPage, contact Help DuPage. They have volunteer groups that can be served by your efforts. Today I had a call about people wanting to make masks. I said, you may want to go to the hospitals, donate those masks to the hospitals. So if you get people who want to volunteer, please direct them to Help DuPage, because Help DuPage will set them in a direction where they'll be able to offer that assistance. And with that, I'll end my report on the coronavirus. Anything anybody wanted to add or comment? I know you're all paying attention to that. I think all of us, I think Darien is doing well. When I went out yesterday, I didn't notice many cars on the street, so I want to congratulate the residents. I think this is a tough situation. People are making a lot of sacrifices. We're all making sacrifices, but staying at home saves lives. I think that's critical. People get that message. So thank you. With that, that takes us to the city clerk's report. Joanna?
I just have one item. City offices will be closed on Friday, April 10th of 2020, in honor of Good Friday.
Thank you. Our city administrator's report, Mr. Van.
Thank you, Mayor. Just the one item to talk about for just a couple minutes is the budget that the city council spent, a number of meetings here, and then like a wicked curveball, everything changed overnight, and the mayor and I had gone back and looked at some things, given the state of the economy now. We looked at where we think our revenues are going to drop to, and the need to hold off on most of our capital projects and most of our capital purchases and some of our maintenance items. In summary, I've calculated the revenue will be down just this year about $628,000 from what I originally had estimated we would be at, and I've reflected that in the budget numbers. And the city council has basically received two budgets. One was before the virus, and one was after the virus and the economy hit. And the budget changes that the mayor and I have talked about and sent to the council result in a little over $3,600,000 from a variety of the budgets, and that is all laid out in the draft budget that was available on our website for the public hearing. Typically, we have our public hearing, and the city council will approve the budget that night. Obviously, we were not going to do that tonight because it was hard to get the word out on the budget, and the public hearing was scheduled, so we needed to continue with that. So again, everything on that list, we're recommending to be revised in the final budget that's approved by the council. That is still planned to be on the agenda in 2 weeks because our budget year begins May 1st. It's our hopes that the city council will look at that and recognize that is the most conservative thing we can do now in this difficult time. And while we all believe that everything will get back on track, we do not know when. And this will be the safest course for the city to proceed, is basically punting on most things we have talked about in the preliminary budget.
If I could add one thing to that, and I try to put this out in the email I sent you, I've been sending you updates. That draft budget has items in it that we all agreed are good things. And any one of us can make a case for anything that got cut, that Brian and I went through and cut out of the budget. You can make a case for, each of you could probably make a case for individual things. And what I'm urging you is please take Mr. Banna's advice, our recommendations. We don't know where we're going to be financially, and I think that it's prudent that we sit back and we take a serious look at where we're at. In 3 to 4 months, we may be in worse condition, and that $3.6 million that we're cutting out, which is discretionary and a lot of capital projects, will be there to assist us in other ways. So that's the end of my comments. I realize, again, some of you may have other concerns with regarding things that we did cut. We like that input, but at the same time, I really would hope that you'd honor the request, the cuts that Brian and I approved. Any comments?
So that, I know that, some things obviously, vision are to be skipped over, and other things are just delayed. So things that, are skipped over, is it possible, say, like September 1, that could still happen, that were scheduled to happen perhaps later in the year, not like summer projects, but more fourth quarter things, be revisited if things end up being better off to be at this.
You know, Mary, my hope is that by June or July, we see some changes in terms of how we all could interact and things that we can do. I want to be positive and say that's going to happen. We just don't know. We don't even know if there's going to be a baseball season or a football season. Even the NFL's not sure they're going to be able to operate come September. I think you make a legitimate point. If September 1st things look different, can we go back and revisit certain things? I'll let Brian answer that, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, the treasurer and I and Julie will be looking very closely at the finances weekly, monthly, and we'll see where we're at the end of every month. Some of the revenues and things we'll be receiving now really and are audited from some previous months. So people that might have been shopping in January, we're getting some of those numbers. But we'll be watching that. But at this point, there'll be some little things that I know the city council would want to do that do not have a big impact on our budget. And Alderwoman Sullivan and I had talked about a Citizen of the Year event. We had a lot of other things that we were really trying to introduce this year for the community and for the community have, a nice time for social events. So at this point, those are on hold, and should there become a time later in the year that some of those things could be fit in, we'll bring our financial picture back to the council and look for recommendations.
Mike?
Like the whole sense in here, like Brian, major things that can
fairly easily be put off. We hate to do it because we've had a reputation. We've done such a good job of maintaining infrastructure and everything, but being safe rather than sorry later on, I think you guys have done a good job putting those things together. Mary, I think Brian's been looking at like a lot of the potential lost revenues. There will be lost revenues, there's no question. We just really can't quantify the extent of it right now, and I don't think any of us can until we really know at what point we come out the other end of this thing. The other part we have, though, as Joe mentioned, we have a lot of businesses that have been in Darien for a long time. So even though we have cut a lot of things out of our budget, there's some things in there where we may have to assist some of these businesses, and we haven't addressed anything like that. Again, we don't know, we can't quantify the lost revenue, but we also can't quantify what assistance might be necessary from our standpoint to help businesses that might be critical to Darien. The other thing I'd like to reach out, and I really probably don't have to say this, but our department heads. I mean, Dan and the chief, they do a great job running their departments. And I know we've addressed a lot of these major things. You start talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. At this point, I think we should focus also on little things. I mean, we do some training. We have mandatory training. We have discretionary training. Office supplies. I mean, we get down to petty little stuff like that. We haven't addressed any of that in this proposal, but I know Chief and Dan, I know as we go through this, we want to take a second look at everything and make sure what we are spending is truly necessary to operating and providing our residents with the best safety and infrastructure that we possibly can based on whatever our resources are. And hopefully we'll come out of this quicker than we realize, but until we get our arms around it, I compliment the Mayor and Brian in really taking this major first step, and I definitely support what you guys are doing.
Any other comments? Alderman Klistad?
Thanks, Mayor. One quick comment I want to mention is that with recent legislation that has passed in Congress, there's an opportunity for small businesses to go out and receive 2 months of funding based on how many employees they have, how much rent, health insurance they pay. So one thought I have potentially is, was it the economic development team or group will reach out to local businesses to see if they need any help to apply for these loans. I know my wife has a small business and she actually was working on it today. So they can reach out and get those loans that will cover them for roughly 60 days. So it covers rent, overhead, and any additional expenses. So I'm not sure how many Darien businesses know about that, but that is one thing they can reach out and help them support during this difficult time.
Alderman Klistad, I had an email conversation with Gina Bilkey and members of the EDC, and I told them that when we have committee meetings again, once the shelter in place is over, their work probably will change considerably with regard to our concerns over our small businesses. Mr. Corn and I and Mr. Vanna had conversations today regarding the best way to communicate with businesses over getting some of these small business loans. All the information you're mentioning about size of the business, number of employees, how the money is going to be used for rent, or I think 75% of the money, Mike, has to be used for employee wages in order for them not to have to pay the loan back. I think that's, and those who don't pay the loan back, I think the percentage is set at 1%, from what I understand. That information is going out there, Tom. We're getting that information out there to the residents. Mike and I and Brian are going to probably talk Thursday. We want to make sure that what we put out on Direct Connect this week is the most up-to-date information that we have. And maybe, Michael, you want to add something to that.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. Tom, as you know, my son has a business similar to your wife's. Fortunately, they're able to work from home. They're able to keep their employees and keep paying them. This loan that you're talking about is meant to incentivize companies to keep their employees. Fortunately, my son and your wife have been able to retain their employees, so they'll benefit the most from this. The people that really probably won't benefit, if you have a restaurant, for instance, that has to close, unless they continue paying their employees, they can qualify to get the loan, but they won't qualify for the forgiveness at the back end, so it would have to be repaid. So I don't want to discourage them from applying for it,
but unless you are continuing to pay your people, and even me, I have a hard time, just like I do with the city, how do you tell people to, hey, keep paying your employees in the hope that the economy is going to turn around and everything's going to be back open in a couple of months? Because now if you're on the loan for a couple of months and you can't afford to continue paying those employees, now you've not only spent the money on the payroll costs, but now you've got to pay the loan back because you weren't able to continue retaining the employees. But those people that do qualify, it's a very good program. Don't get me wrong. It's an excellent program. And if you qualify, what I told the mayor today, the one thing that's for sure, and I've had a lot of interaction with some former clients of mine, a couple of accountants I know, and I've attended a couple of webinars on this already. The thing that seems to be the hardest is there's $350 billion available under this program, and they are going fairly quickly, but the banks have to be providing the money. I've had instances where people have gone to a bank and the bank said, hey, we don't want to deal with you, you're not one of our regular customers. What I would encourage people that think they might be eligible to go to the bank that they're doing business with, because the bank that you're doing business with is most likely going to pay a little more attention to you than a guy just walking in off the street. So that's the first thing. So even though we might be able to say, yeah, any one of the particular banks in Darien does offer these, again, I think they're going to be catering to their current customers before they take in outsiders. So that's what I discussed with the mayor today. I'm strongly suggesting any businesses that might qualify, talk to the bank they're doing business with. It also helps in terms of the amount of paperwork that they're going to have to provide. Some banks are being very, I don't want to say very lax, but they're not requiring as much paperwork as other banks. And again, if you're doing business with a particular bank, they're already going to know you and your operations and have a much more bigger comfort level in providing the loan to you. So I guess the most important thing that people should be doing, because this is a $350 billion program, but once the funds are expended, theoretically they're gone and no one else is eligible. I was listening to the president's comments this evening though, and he feels the program is so important that it will be extended and funded with further funds. So whether that happens or not, there's no guarantee, but it is an excellent program. But again, I'm encouraging people that think they might qualify, as opposed to coming to the city and actually probably slowing the process down, contact your bank immediately, because they'll be able to provide you with the documentation they're going to be looking for. And they've started accepting these as of Friday, so we're still fairly early in the process. But I encourage them to contact the current banking relationship. Would be the best way to expedite the funds available to them.
Any additional comments? If none, then we'll move on to the department head information and questions. Does anybody have any questions for Chief Thomas or for Mr. Gombeck?
There's no comments, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a couple comments myself.
Okay.
Thank you. Elected officials, residents out there, one of the things that we've been looking at is brush pickup, some of the brush pickup procedures. And again, not just due to the COVID-19, but basically to simplify the process was we're requesting residents to pile brush no higher than 2 foot high. That gives us the opportunity to better, or I should say, operate at an optimal level by not pulling these branches apart. So again, I want to stress to the residents that during brush pickup that the branches are no higher than 2 foot at a height maximum. And then further, what Treasurer Corn had mentioned, again, I can't exemplify it enough with small businesses. You know, hopefully there's a lot of small businesses out there that are listening to what Treasurer Corn had said. Contact your bank and see what opportunities there are to apply for these types of loans. As far as public works goes, you know, we're taking due caution. You will see individuals driving in trucks, or I should say one individual to a truck. Again, we're doing jobs that do not require close contact, so we're taking every precaution as possible. We're not doing any type of split shifts. Our crews have been notified of every type of instances as well as procedures that are coming in place on a daily basis. So for the questions, that's the end of my report.
Chief Thomas, could you update us a little bit about special measures you're taking as well?
Sure. The building is closed, so if you need the police, call the police. And when you call the police, the NUCOM will ask a series of questions. And if there's not a reason for the police to come to the scene, we are going to take that report over the phone. Obviously, accidents with injuries, accidents with lane blockage, domestic violence, any type of call like that, we're going to respond just as we normally would. We do have PPE, and probably starting tomorrow, we'll probably put that on each employee for every contact. In the past, it was more discretionary and only necessary when you had a confirmed case or a suspected case.
Any questions for the chief or for Mr. Gonda? If none, that takes us to
Sorry, Mayor, I couldn't get my mute button. Chief, what's the overall crime patterns that have kind of changed with people living inside the homes and whatever else? I'm assuming burglaries are down, but I'll bet you domestics are up. I would guess.
Well, it's significantly slower than it had been in the past. For not crime, but calls for service, they're down probably 60-70%. Crime itself, like you mentioned, the residential burglaries because people are home, those type of things, those are down. Domestic violence was believed that it would increase, and it's stayed about the same. So it hasn't really jumped up yet.
Good.
A little bit surprising, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, if no further questions, it takes us to the treasurer's report. Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, I'm requesting the council approve warrant number 19/2024, the amount of $452,713.32 from listed funds, and payroll for the period ended March 26th in the amount of $253,207.13, for a total to be approved of $705,920.45.
Motion to approve the warrant.
So moved.
Alderman Kenny. Second by Alderman Belzak. Any questions or comments regarding the warrant? If none, the roll.
Kenny.
Aye.
Belzak.
Aye.
Plistic.
Aye.
Gustafson.
Aye.
Shower.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
Vaughn.
Aye.
7 ayes.
The warrant's been approved. Standing committee reports. So any of the aldermen have any reports that they would like to provide the council with tonight? I realize we don't have any of your meetings going on, so there's probably no reports, but thank you. That takes us to questions and comments, agenda related. In the audience tonight, we have the gentleman who is the lawyer for the petitioner or the individual interested in the car wash, and we're going to let him come forward and speak for 3 minutes with regard to the item dealing with annexation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Daniel. I'm an attorney with Daniel Law Office in Oak Brook Terrace. I've worked on projects from single-family residential up to $1 billion in value, lifestyle, outdoor shopping centers. I've been the municipal attorney for Westmont and Oak Brook Terrace, where I met Casey Cavello, who was mentioned previously. Casey would have been here tonight. He is an essential service provider in as much as he's the chief of police for the city of Oak Brook Terrace. He did want to be here, and I explained to him tonight's just the annexation question, and I'm going to focus on that. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is Westmont's experience with forced annexation. Westmont looked at its territory, its borders, and had a lot of gaps in it, and went through the same discussions that were just had in the earlier part of this meeting concerning the land at 973 75th Street. When I was the village attorney for Westmont, they engaged in a process where they went through every single gap in the village of Westmont, and over that time period annexed dozens of homes. In doing that, through forced annexation instead of voluntary annexation, the village of Westmont lost its ability to work with new home builders, new developers of non-residential land, the ability to negotiate favorable terms in annexation agreements, and frankly, there were some projects that could have been done better at the county. In this particular instance, you have a land that is immediately adjacent on 3 sides to Darien. Makes sense. Instinct might be that you want to force annex this, but the question that I ask you is why? Why is it that forced annexation is required at this point when you can enter into an annexation agreement? You've got a great attorney. You can plan for a staging of the annexation so that a transition can occur from county jurisdiction to Darien jurisdiction. This project went through the ordinary process. Discussions with the county, discussions with staff, discussions with some elected officials. I got off to a rough start with Alderman Gustafson, obviously, as you may have been able to tell from the correspondence. Before we reached out to neighbors to invite them to a meeting to review the project and plans, I called Alderman Gustafson. I sent him the narrative at the county. I had a discussion with him about the project and said, we're going to reach out to the neighbors. I'd be happy to have you at the meetings. The next call I got on the project was from the media, who had received everything from Alderman Gustafson, along with some statements to the effect that this project's not doable in Darien, when everybody in this meeting knows that that is an incorrect statement. You can enter into an annexation agreement. You can conduct this as a planned unit development. A B2 special use for a car wash can be approved. Within the annexation agreement, if you want guarantees for 20 years on trees, tree buffers, screening, sound, you can place that into an annexation agreement just as easily by negotiating terms that are fair. And I know that Mr. Covello is a resident of Darien, 3 decades, who's now $30,000 or $40,000 into the hole because we have a situation where someone is pushing forced annexation into a community that's not having hearings. We would hopefully have the DuPage County Zoning Board of Appeals up and running in May. They had planned to go forward March 19th with an approval vote this month. Obviously, I'm wearing a mask because we're in a situation and we're not going to have hearings. But I would encourage all of you to very seriously think about this issue of forced annexation. First of all, there's no rush. You know that if we go through the county, you're going to have plenty of time when the ZBA meets and the county board finally gets to its meetings to consider forced annexation. But I would encourage the city to work with us and attempt to see if an annexation agreement can solve any of the issues that we're facing. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to old business, and there being no old business, go to our consent agenda. There being no consent agenda, takes us to new business. Item A, consideration of a motion to approve an ordinance granting a special use for an eating establishment at 7516 South Cass, Suite 25B, Brookhaven Plaza Shopping Center, Carla's Red Hot Restaurant. Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Gustafson, seconded by Alderman Belzak. Questions or comments?
Is it open?
If none, the roll.
Gustafson,
Aye.
Belzak. Oh, he's on mute. Clistic,
Aye, I'm sorry.
Clistic,
Aye.
Kenny,
Aye.
Shower,
Aye.
Sullivan,
Aye.
Vaughn. 7 ayes.
Motion's approved. Item B, consideration of a motion to direct staff to initiate procedures for the annexation of 973 75th Street and adjacent utility easement. Motion to approve. Alderman Gustafson, seconded by Alderman Belzak. Questions and comments from the Alderman first.
I just wanted to say that I did receive 6 emails from residents, one of them including my predecessor, Sylvia MacGyver, who was in this position for 14 years, strongly favoring the annexation to move forward tonight. The other residents were located directly behind where this property is located, so pretty much you can reach over and hand a glass of wine across the fence. There is an individual here tonight, Grace, who also lives across, who wants to come up and speak at this point in time. But it's, like I say, all the residents I spoke to, everyone is for the annexation. This is valuable property to Darien for sales tax revenue. If a car wash goes in, there is very, very little, if any, sales tax revenue city of Darien. Frankly, it should have been developed as part of the development that went just to the east of it if the owner had sold the property at that time. So we wouldn't even be having this discussion. But it's valuable property for sales tax purposes, and I think that should be done. All the emails that I received, like I say, I'm not going to read through all of them. The aldermen received all these, are very favorable for the annexation to start. So I'm making like Grace.
I believe we have a resident who wants to come forward to speak. We have 3 minutes. Please just state your name.
Good evening, I'm Grace Quack. I live directly behind the property, so I am one of the 2 homes that directly touches 973 75th Street. I'm very disappointed in hearing that there was a neighbors meeting. The neighbors, both my immediate neighbors, ones that have lived there for 33 years since the property was put into place, they're in their 70s. I know they reached out to Eric, to Mr. Gustafson, as well as some of you. They're distraught. They haven't been sleeping. I feel bad amongst COVID issues, so I'm trying to help them as much as I can. They literally have no internet, so I typed up their letter for them and sent it in. But also, the way that the property is looking to be developed, well, I'll focus on the annexation. Fully in support of it. There were no neighbors meetings, no communications up until now at all, even now, with me or my immediate neighbor. There's 140 feet wide. It's a 140 feet wide lot, plus 10 feet of the easement. The easement plus 65 feet are behind my property, so my property is 75 feet wide. My neighbor's is also 75, and he's between me and the townhomes. Neither one of us have received any communications, and we are directly touching the property. I have been maintaining the property since I moved in. Original owners have been maintaining part of the property since they first moved in the late 80s when the home was built. I have tried to reach out to have both, I reached out to Darien actually a couple of years ago when there were some trees that fell, to have that taken care of. That was the first time I learned in 2017 that it was not Darien property, that jurisdiction was DuPage County. DuPage County tried to reach out to the resident to clean it up. Nothing happened, so it's all been at my expense up until now, and still is. The other things I did want to note are what was mentioned earlier. It does touch residential on 3 sides, so it's our 2 homes plus a part of the townhomes that's not accounted for in the current plans. There's also, it will affect, it doesn't provide cohesiveness. I know I emailed a couple of pictures, satellite views. As far as the property next to it, which is Haraldson's Car Repair, they're exactly identical lots in size. The yards that are between, I'm learning all these terms now because I had to do my research. The yards that Haraldson's has between them and the residential properties, which is actually 7 homes out of the 9, the 2 being mine and my neighbors that touch this other piece of property. They have approximately 75 feet between the residential property lines and Haraldson's actual building, or where they store cars, on all sides, and they maintain a retention area as well in the back. So it would be unfair for 2 additional homes not to follow the same cohesiveness as was done with Haraldson's a long time ago. The other piece that of course, is a concern to my immediate neighbors and myself is the lack of conversations, being a neighborly, plan. No one, again, has reached out to us. We are worried about decreased property values, of course. We're thinking, do we all sell our homes? Well, we can't. That's not going to help as well. I just moved there. I've invested in my home. I don't want to go. I do like the area a lot. And then there are other rules that I know I've sent over email that I don't want to necessarily go into here. But there's other questions as far as not just the yards, traffic concerns, noise concerns. I've looked at other car washes. I've read other literature about noise. I do think that what Darien's done so far along 75th Street makes sense. I do think that this property will be crucial in also establishing some of the traffic patterns on 75th Street because there is that turn, and I see some people coming out at Dunkin' Donuts trying to cut through it, going westbound. That's already an issue today. Sometimes you'll see that in the morning. Now coming out of this property, depending on where the driveway goes in, people could be going across 2-3 lanes, however many lanes are there. So there's a lot of, I have spoken to a lot of the neighbors. We're going to have a large gathering come attend the March 19th meeting, but of course that was canceled. I've done a lot of research and have notes on, that were going to be sent over to the county, but that was never sent. That was going to be on behalf of my neighbors and myself, my immediate neighbors. That wasn't sent because it was canceled before that was due. And so I have been in touch with, the way that I found out about this occurring, of anything happening, is there was a lot of activity, strangers walking on my property. And so then after 2 days of that, I needed to get more information. I reached out to DuPage County. I reached out to Alderman Gustafson. This was back in January 31st. Right. And the first week of February, I received feedback that, including the county, saying they were not aware of anything. A month went by, and all of a sudden our worlds were turned upside down. With no notice, less than 2 weeks to do research for that March 19th meeting. So I put flyers together, walked around, tried to pass them out while, obviously working full time. So at 9 o'clock, nobody wants to open their doors. So I was sticking them in mailboxes. But there is a large part of our subdivision, especially those immediate homes, that are very supportive in annexing the property so that Darien can help develop this property. Thank you.
Thank you. The one quick thing I want to note is that, unfortunately, DuPage County has a rule where for public hearings, you don't need to put a sign up on the property, unlike the city of Darien and other communities. And I strongly recommend DuPage County change that because there's no transparency or public notice whatsoever, and it's ridiculous how they handle that piece of the property. Thank you.
Mr. Banner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment. During the work session, Alderman Belzak asked, is there any downside to this? And during the work session, we had a chance to talk about that, and we said there is no downside to this. This is a good idea for the city. It makes good planning sense for the city. The attorney had some examples. The attorney for the petitioner had some examples of Westmont. Every situation is different. What Westmont tries to do in no way should be compared to us, to the city, looking at annexing this one lot that's surrounded, that's being proposed to be developed in the county. It's something that the city does not have within its zoning. So again, if some of the residents might not have heard that during the work session, but may have heard the attorney's comments. So I just wanted to clarify that again and reiterate to Alderman Belzak's comment, there is no downside to this for the city of Darien. There's only upside.
Yeah, and I'm going to reiterate what I said during the work session as well, and that is the council tonight is voting on a recommendation to annex the property, to start the process to annex the property. You're not voting on a car wash tonight. And I want the residents to understand that as well, because a lot of the emails I get, and I've received a lot of them, say, I'm against the car wash, vote for annexation. Just so the residents understand, if this property is annexed into the city of Darien, the petitioner has the opportunity to go through the process of asking for the correct zoning and going through the process of building a car wash on that site. And that process, it starts out with our city planner, it goes to our planning and zoning committee, it goes to municipal services, and then it comes eventually to the city council. There's a lot of opportunities for residents to have input into that process. But I don't want residents to think if we vote to start the annexation process that the car wash is going away. That's not necessarily the case. As I told the gentleman who's making this proposal on the phone, annexation is not a bad thing. Annexation might be a good thing. And so I want the residents to understand that as well. I think the council understands that. I think you know exactly what you're voting on tonight. Any comments? Mary?
I have a question. So when prior to Darien Town Center was built, was that already Darien, or I'm trying to figure out why this little sliver, little pocket, is not Darien already? So I mean, I know Harold is, but when the new development went in, strip mall, starting with Massage Envy and going all the way down, was that organic as well?
In part. of the
In part.
pre-annexation agreement.
Actually, Mary, just a real brief history, but Safeway wanted to build a Dominick's where the townhouses are at. And we had a lot of residents from that area who turned out in opposition to that. And as a result, the city did not approve the building of a Dominick's, but instead we approved the building of the townhomes that now are on Abbey Court. And the alderman who was alderman at that time, I think, lived in Grace's house, I think 2510. My brother-in-law and my sister. Small world. But that's why that became townhouses. And then Town Center 2 was going to be part of that Dominick's. And at that point then, that property was an old fire station, and that became Town Center 2. So all of that happened at the same time.
But it was always Darien.
Yeah. Alderman Klistak?
Joe, I couldn't hear Mary. A part was unincorporated.
Yeah, first off,
Part of it was
Yeah,
unincorporated?
there was a pre-annexation agreement and development agreement, and I don't remember which parcel. But
Okay.
there was
Yeah, I
a
don't remember either.
development agreement. It might have been one of the parcels, but it was a combined development, as I recall. I was just
Okay.
coming on at the time, but
Alderman, Mr. Gombeck, did you have something you wanted to add? Or?
No, I just basically threw somebody property. Part of that sales sector, unfortunately, he held out.
Yep.
Held out. Developer.
Okay. Anyone else? Alderman Klistak?
thanks, Mayor. I want to quickly commend Alderman Gustafson for talking to residents in regards to this issue. And two quick questions. First one, this one's for Mr. Gomez. Is there anything with regards to water lines, storm lines, or sewer we have to do?
We're pretty much safe. I mean, ironically, just to the west of the property, there's currently a 10-foot easement that is referred to as a storm water utility easement. Without that looking further into the easement, I'm not sure what the rights incorporates, whether for the city or the county, it is definitely storm utility. Right now, the advantage is prior to the annexation, water charge would be for out of town rate charge, so he back to water.
Then the second question is more for Brian. How would we, if council wanted to look at evaluating other areas of town? Or is like a process?
well, this is, I think compared to others, this is very unique. This is a commercial business type property. The city had back in probably 2004 looked at some voluntary annexations.
you know, we're careful with annexations because we don't always want to annex property. There's a lot of property that's unincorporated that would cost us more to annex than it would provide back in revenues to the city. So we're very careful about that. And again, there is definitely, and we talked about this again a long time ago, a difference between force annexing residents that have been in their homes for 30, 35 years and forcing them into the community. And the discussions back, again, a long time ago, 04 to probably 06 or 07, was if a residents want to voluntarily come in, then we would entertain that and look at that and do a review to make sure it was cost effective. But those residents that have had homes there a long time, if they wanted to remain unincorporated, that they would not be forced annexed. That was a long time ago. We would simply look at a map and have the city and get direction from the city council if they would like us to look at and reiterate a program that we tried many years ago. But again, I think this particular parcel is not going to be similar to many of the other ones the council will be talking about. If you want to annex more property, you'll be talking about single-family homes that have existed for a long time and will continue to be single-family homes in areas. So we would have to have, this is probably a really good topic for goal setting because it would need more discussion than just simply looking tonight.
Yeah, just curious for other residents that might have the same. Surrounded by Darien, near me actually. Cass Avenue.
Yeah, there's size requirements and a number of things that that we would have to review. So again, there's, this particular parcel, there is some time sensitivity on it. Many others, there's not, and we can certainly, it sounds like a good topic for goal setting.
Okay, I have any other questions? I have a motion and a second to approve. Call the roll.
Gustafson,
Aye.
Belzak, Vaughn, Sullivan,
Aye.
Shower, Kenny, Clistic, 7 ayes.
Brian, you want to just briefly discuss the process where we go from here?
Yeah, I think it was included in the packet. There's just a number of things we'll need to do, such as formally notifying the owner, putting a notice in the paper. City attorney would write up the ordinance. It's basically that. Dan has estimated that's probably 4 to 6 weeks to get that back to this and done to the city council to where there's an ordinance that the council can approve.
Okay.
And consider.
All right. That takes us to question, comments, and announcements of a general nature. Does anybody have anything for the good of the council tonight? Grace? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge your earlier comment. The residents are aware that tonight was about the annexation, not about the car wash. It's just so hard to push that down and separate the two right now because it's less than a month old. So I did want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Mr. Jennings?
Good evening again. Knowing that you just voted to start the process towards forced annexation, I would ask each of you to review my correspondence of last Friday so that you can understand that there are cons to the decision to forcibly annex. In the near future, we will communicate with village staff. It is likely that you will see a petition to voluntarily annex pursuant to an annexation agreement. I understand Ms. Quick is a bit upset for lack of communication. Our reach out to Alderman Gustafson occurred Monday, March 9th. The call back from the media came the 11th. That was a Wednesday, and the plan was for Mr. Cavello to get out into the neighborhood that weekend. We were on lockdown, and we didn't think it was the most appropriate thing to go door to door given the circumstances at the time. Now, We're happy to meet with neighbors. I offered Ms. Quick the plans and the narrative, the communication to you from last Friday. She refused it. She can take my number. Any neighbor can take my cell phone number. It's 312-927-0177. Any neighbor at all. Alderman Gustafson's had my phone number and has not called, but he's welcome to call as well. I believe an annexation on a voluntary basis is the best case scenario for everybody here. To the extent that you hear comments about Marketplace at Darien and how this property should be developed like that, you cannot get interconnection between these two properties without an annexation agreement. If the Quicks would like to have enhanced landscaping on their land because they don't want to have us taking care of landscaping they're relying on for a screen, you're not getting that without an annexation agreement. Otherwise, you stand accused of contract zoning. That's where the city can contract for the betterment of the neighborhood and its residents in an annexation agreement. That's voluntary. You lose that opportunity when you go into the forced annexation process. Thank you for your time. We are available to meet with any of the aldermen and any of the residents under the proper circumstances. All right, I hope you all be safe and healthy.
Thanks for joining
Thank
us
you.
tonight. Is there anything else? Alderman Gustafson.
I just have one other comment. I've mentioned this before. Is like I opened up the police report, and what do I see? Burglaries due to vehicles that are left unlocked. Once again, a lot of people are home now. Make sure you lock your vehicles in your driveways. Don't leave things in there that are visible. Take them inside your house, and please lock your cars. The police have enough things right now to worry about rather than someone breaking into your open car. Thank you.
I would just finish by saying that I really like to see residents adhere to the stay home, save a life. We're really promoting that campaign. It's something that started in Chicago. You'll see it on our social media. You'll see it on television because it's a City of Chicago campaign. I know there are residents out there who have made individual decisions to have gatherings at their home. Our police had to visit one of those residences. I got a report today of another one that took place. For the most part, I think Darien residents are adhering to the stay-at-home order, but I think that people really need to consider the impact that their behavior has on the entire community. So I would ask everyone to please, if you can, stay at home and save lives. Anyone else? Mary?
Thank you, Mayor. I just your very hard work, extra hard, very long hours, are running, and also all this critical information about the COVID-19 outbreak. I mean, obviously, these are really for your commitment, and I want to reiterate, especially as the weather gets nicer, hard to stay. Definitely go out in the yard, walk your dog, or take house. But I know grounds, but it's our own family units. Advantage of technology like Zoom and other apps that help tell. Praying that everyone stays healthy. Save lives, like Mayor Joe said.
Thanks, Mary. Anyone else? Alderman Belzak?
Follow to that, Milo, I think drive up at Chiba couldn't be easier. Ordered on the internet. Same thing with Brookhaven. They have a curbside pickup. It was super easy, and I think we should all try to continue to use our money in Darien. And there's plenty of businesses that have the type of services where you just drive up, not go in, not take any risks, and it's great.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else? If nothing more, I wish all of you well. Stay at home, save a few lives by doing that. Thanks again for your participation tonight. I think we'll be probably holding the April meeting in the same format. I want to thank you for the time you've given to this tonight, and with that, I need a motion to adjourn. Mary, seconded by Lester. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is, meeting's adjourned at 8:45. Thank you, everyone.